Okay, so with this video, what we're going to be taking a look at is how to actually go about addressing a prompt when you have the rhetorical analysis. So, um, first thing to keep in mind of like what actually is the definition of rhetorical analysis. And I want to point out that there is a difference between summary and just telling me what the passage is about, and then actually telling me how the methods successfully convey that content. You are not summarizing. That is not what this is. Okay? You are not telling me what the passage is about. You are assuming. In fact, you logically know that your audience is not someone that needs to be told what the passage is about. This is me, I've read the passages. Or it's Mrs. Brenning, who has also read the passages. Or it's Mrs. Mancini, who has also read the passages. Or it's one of the readers on the AP exam, all of which know the content. So the assumption is that you already know what's going on in the passage. What you need to do is identify what makes that successful, right? What do they do? What does the writer or the speaker do? What methods does he or she employ that make this content or that make the actual piece successful in achieving perhaps its purpose, or relating to the audience, which are, like I said in the previous video, the two most common reasons you're assessing the rhetoric used in this piece. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that the prompt will usually provide some type of effect, or at least tell you that you need to identify that. So what you need to do is tell the piece, or your essay will talk about how the piece actually creates this effect. And in most recent prompts, I would say within the last 5 years, they've asked you to identify the effect, right? So they might ask you, like, how does the author achieve his or her purpose? So then you need to identify what the purpose is and how the piece conveys that. So first of all, if I'm handed a rhetorical analysis prompt, how do I write it? Well, the first thing I never ever want you to overlook what the prompt is providing you. And we've already displayed some kind of like initial misrepresentation or misunderstanding, or just not reading the prompt carefully enough. We've already demonstrated that with, for example, the adversity prompt, not recognizing what the prompt is actually asking us to do. So what you need to do is first analyze the prompt and determine what kind of analysis it's asking you to do. Is it asking you to identify the purpose? Is it asking you to identify the audience? What is the reason for your initial analysis here, right? And then it's always going to be what the effect of that address is, or what the piece is. How is that piece achieving the purpose? How is the address achieving the purpose? How is the address relating to the audience? So that's the first thing you need to do. Make sure that you read the prompt, understand what the prompt is asking you to do, and then carefully read the passage. This is when annotation is absolutely key. There's going to be prompts, there's going to be sentences, in fact there might be paragraphs that you are kind of unclear what's going on. And that's why your practice of annotation will be very key in helping you understand what is this prompt asking me to do. So you need to understand the passage, which may not seem like a big deal, but that's where the annotation comes in, where you're underlining, where you're starring things, when you're perhaps summarizing things, not full sentences, because remember this would be a timed situation, but you're just giving yourself an indication. Sometimes with prompts that have really long sentences, I even just make hash marks or like slash marks where each sentence ends. So I understand, hey, this is a complete thought right here. And actually, the longer the sentence is, or even the shorter the sentence is, there's something being conveyed to you. There's something important there, right? So there's more ideas that are trying to be shoved into one sentence, or this idea that's a short sentence breaks up this idea, so there's must be something important there. Also, the prompt will sometimes, again, I've said this multiple times, have some kind of, I suppose you could call it a hidden question, meaning like, what is the effect, right? What is it asking you to do in terms of, is it asking you to relate it back up to the purpose? Is it asking you to relate it back up to the audience? Never skim through the prompt and assume you know what it's asking. Carefully read to make sure you know what the prompt is asking you to do. So, for example, is it asking you the purpose? That might be something that you need to answer in the introduction to make sure that you have identified properly, and so the reader knows you've identified that properly as well. Is it asking perhaps how the appeal relates to the audience? That's something that you would want to, again, answer in the introduction. So, watch out for that hidden aspect it might be asking you to look for. Again, I've said this multiple times throughout the last video and now this video. Oftentimes it has to do with purpose or audience, what it's asking you to identify. And most of the time, if it doesn't ask you to identify those elements, you're going to want to identify them anyways. Otherwise, why is it important to note that this person uses an emotional appeal to bravery or fear, right? Why would it be relevant to know that? Probably because it has something to do with the purpose or of the audience. Thinking back to Mary Ewald with the Saddam piece. Like, why would she bring up the fact that, why would she have that little brief note about how much the health concerns about her son? Or why would she appeal to her credibility as being someone who sympathizes or tries to educate others about the Arab nations? Because her audience is an Arab leader, right? So knowing this is very, very important. Why would she bring up the fact that her son could potentially be very ill? Because she's trying to get him back home. So those two things are going to be very important for you to identify in your essay. So let's take a look at that prompt that you were provided. This is the 2002 Form B, the Julius Caesar piece. So this is pretty typical in terms of a prompt in the information that you were provided and sometimes the question that you're going to be asked. So taking a look here. Below are excerpts from a crucial scene, something important from Shakespeare's play, Julius Caesar. Now, the first thing you're probably thinking to yourself is, oh, holy crap, I know that. I know that. I've read that. I read that last year in 10th grade, or 2 years ago in 10th grade. Oh my God, I know this. I know this. And you should be freaking out because, yes, you do know this. They choose texts that they feel either the students have heard of, right? Or if you haven't heard of it, perhaps you've read it, and even if you haven't, you have enough information to be able to relate to this text. So the first thing you should be saying is, OMG, OMG, I know it. Okay? So then continuing, Calpurnia, who is Caesar's wife, has dreamt that Caesar will be murdered and tries to persuade him to remain home. So this is important because, okay, this is what she's trying to do. Remain home is for Calpurnia because she wants him to remain safe. Decius, another person, a member of a group of conspirators, tries to persuade Caesar to go to the Senate where they will kill him. Now, because you are good AP students and because you remember this from when we have done all the rhetorical triangles, this is the ever-important context, which a prompt will provide you. It will provide you minimal context at least. If it's not a piece of literature, which they rarely are, this is actually surprising that this is on the exam, but they will provide you perhaps the time period, letting you know who the speaker is, and so you might be able to associate some things about the speaker or the time period. So they will provide you some context, which is very relevant to understanding this text. Right? So then looking at the actual prompt here, read the excerpt carefully, then write an essay in which you analyze the rhetoric of both arguments. So I need to take a look at Calpurnia's and Decius's arguments and explain why you think Caesar finds Decius's argument more persuasive than Calpurnia's. So it's telling you right here, hey, Caesar agreed with Decius. And if you remember this play, you know that he goes and gets murdered. Spoiler alert if you fell asleep during 10th grade. But, so it's telling you here that Caesar did listen to Decius and that he found that more persuasive. So it's telling you this is what the choice was. Now you need to identify why he made that choice. What was effective about Decius's argument? And it sometimes will provide you some things to take a look at. Choice of detail, use of appeals, and understanding of an audience. Again, you should be pooping your pants because you know this stuff. OMG, appeals. Oh, we've talked a lot about that in class. Oh, holy poop, we talked a lot about that throughout Outliers and throughout all the other essays. That's right there. And then understanding of audience, Ms. Hain has just spent the last 10 minutes telling you that this type of stuff is important. Oh, holy crap. And you know what detail is. So this is a completely typical prompt that you would see. And knowing full well that you are more than capable of completing this type of essay. Taking a look at this prompt as well. This is a different prompt, not one that you were provided. But I just want you to see how the prompt up here is typical, much like what you'll see here. So, the letter below was written in 1866, some context, from the English novelist Marion Evans Lewes, who is also known by the pen name George Elliot. So this is who it was written by. She is a novelist, and she had a pen name. In response to a letter from an American woman by the name of Louisiana. Man, I definitely said that wrong. Anyways, Mel Fay Pierce. So giving me some context. From a woman to a woman who had a pen name that sounds quite masculine, if I do say so myself. George Elliot, totally dude names. So in this time period, by a woman to a woman, we'll see. Now you have to read the text. So then this is again the context. Oh, you know this stuff. Oh my goodness, you know it. Now here's the actual prompt. Read the letter carefully, then write an essay in which you analyze the rhetorical strategies, which is like that, that Lewes uses to establish her position about the development of a writer. And you'll notice this prompt has what we would consider one of those hidden questions. What is her position about the development of a writer? What is that position? So with this essay, you need to identify what this position is before you actually start talking about the strategies that she uses. Because if you don't know this, you are not going to know that. So you'll notice that this prompt is much like the prompt above it with Julius Caesar, which you have spent the time annotating and identifying. It's very similar to this prompt here. This is how a lot of them will go. The only difference between the two is that this prompt down here, the one about George Eliot and writers, just has that hidden question, unlike the prompt above it. So that's how you will go about assessing and identifying and taking a look at a sample at prompts. That's what you would do to prepare to write. Now the next video will walk you through a sample piece of writing, which is a rhetorical analysis essay.